What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Jay is back again for chapter 3 of Building a Holistic Life. Today, we jump into passions, everything that makes us want to get out of bed and make the most of our lives. So come on, let's dive into it and explore some of the different passions that people can have that really push them in order to make their dreams a reality. So let's dive into it. Alright, so we examined a few weeks ago the actual structure of a holistic life, and we looked at the first level, which was your ultimate desire, and today we're actually going to jump into that second level, which is your passions. So a passion to me is the thing that you wake up in the morning wanting to do.
I'm a big believer in your passions giving you the strength to continue to pursue your ultimate desires, as these are more long-term goals and it can be difficult to stay the course when you're pushing so hard and really getting involved in delayed gratification.
And a good way of actually kind of exploring that concept is really to ask yourself, if you had all the time in the world, what would you fill it with? So in the past, we've discussed the pyramid structure of a holistic life, but one thing I haven't mentioned yet is this emotions triangle of a holistic life, which is a triangle that's based on the 3 core emotions that ultimately lead to living the best life that you can. And so these 3 things are long-term fulfillment, short-term happiness, and consistent humility. Fulfillment is one of those things that comes from achieving your ultimate desire and is often associated to more of a long-term happiness, right? It's something that once you've achieved, you feel really good about yourself and it constantly brings you happiness. So this is in direct contrast with short-term happiness, which we try and fill our lives with every single day by doing simple things that brings us joy and that makes us do more with our day and our time. And so this is where your passions come in, because equally as important to that long-term fulfillment and happiness that comes from achieving your ultimate desire, kind of fulfilling and pursuing your passions brings you more of that short-term happiness that you can fill your day with every single day. And so, as I mentioned a few weeks ago, in this holistic life structure, we actually want to try and focus on 2 different passions.
Your passions are also super flexible to your interest, whatever that may be, whether they're creative or active, social or intimate, indoors or outdoors, whatever it is that makes you happy. It is completely flexible and up to you.
So this is designed for you to be able to fill more of your day doing things that actually make you happy, rather than either one, sinking all your time into one objective, which can then get stale and mundane and maybe boring, or in another sense, prevent you from burning out entirely in the search of continuing that passion. So now it is worth mentioning here that these passions can change throughout your life, and especially as you go from being more of a kid to a young adult to a full-fledged adult, these are naturally going to change. For example, me as a kid, I loved basketball. I played basketball from the time I was 8 years old to the time I was 18 years old. And when you asked me what I wanted to do when I got older, when I was super young, I always used to say I wanted to be a professional basketball player. Now, being the shortest kid in pretty much every room and on every team, that idea is pretty much dead in the water. But those kind of that passion, that love, and that drive to do something awesome in sport and through physical activity has kind of morphed throughout my life.
So I grew up as part of the scouting movement for a very long time. I started professional wrestling at some point, but when I was 15 years old, I really got involved in probably my primary passion, which was scuba diving and underwater photography and cinematography. And while I no longer focus on the basketball or the wrestling, I've never stopped exploring and just really trying to get at the core of who I am and figure out what it is that actually makes me happy.
Now, for example, I focus a lot more of my time on exploring and pushing myself outside of my own comfort zone, going on adventures and continuing to grow my different skills and my abilities over time.
Diving is still a huge part of my life, and it is something that I try and do more and more of every year, even though sometimes that's not always possible.
So if you consider my first passion to be more of exploration or outdoor activities, then my second passion explores the more creative side of my personality.
Harnessing my creativity through video production, graphic design, and podcasts allows me to express myself in a way that not very many other things can. While I haven't spent every day working on these skills, looking back, I can definitely see the progress, and part of the pleasure and happiness that comes from being able to do creative tasks is to see how your skills change over time and how you get better.
And over time, just like I have done physically, I've been able to nurture and grow these abilities to a place where I can be very proud of what I can do and what I have done. Now, so with this being said, I I do suggest that your two passions are not necessarily super strongly linked. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that they can't be linked at all.
Backpacking and diving are way too similar because they involve much of the same characteristics. They're outdoorsy, they're highly active, and they often involve travel. So this makes them quite difficult to actually be doing consistently. Also, the happiness that you get is oftentimes just in the moment, and therefore there's very little continuation after the activity is actually concluded.
Whereas two passions that are kind of potentially linked but not too closely related would be something like photography and hiking, where you can go hiking and bring your camera with you, but then on top of that, once you come back, you can continue to engage in your passion through the editing process, publications, whatever it may be. So in this way, we're really trying to link more of a creative passion with a more physical or active passion. And this allows you to kind of do both at the same time, independently, or as I just mentioned, kind of once that primary activity is done, go home and continue to engage kind of well after you've returned back from the field.
So that being said, the second passion should be something unrelated, something where you could do both in one day and not be dead by the end of it.
It's really important here to kind of give a disclaimer where I talk about using more of an umbrella term. I could have gone with, say, diving as my passion, but that is very limiting and restrictive. By using an umbrella term like exploration or adventure, then it gives me more flexibility to actually go out and engage in multiple different things, whether that's climbing, kayaking, canoeing, backpacking, diving, cycling, it could be anything. And so it doesn't actually confine me to that little box. So by using more of an umbrella term, it actually allows you the freedom and flexibility to explore and evolve naturally. In a similar way to how we pursued our ultimate desire through following a certain direction and then pivoting and shifting when necessary, we can follow a very similar path here with your passions, where as you get involved in whatever you're passionate about, if something comes along that you can try and then maybe you find that more interesting at the moment or in the long term, then you can migrate and move towards that. By using more of an umbrella term, it allows you to pivot and shift without feeling guilty like you're leaving something behind, or without you having to feel like you have to change everything about your life, right? It's more about making small modifications rather than complete overhauls. So I want to quickly jump into a few different examples of some of the passions you may have. There are kind of some more umbrella terms and then some more specific ones. If you are someone who's really just focused in on doing one thing, you want to bake, you want to be a baker, that's your passion, then that's totally cool as well. And if you know that you are likely never going to shift away from that, then by all means invest your time and do that. For the purpose of this video and to help as many people as possible, we are going to go through some more umbrella terms as well as some more specific ones and give a little bit of an explanation of each one.
Alright, so the first passion that we're actually going to explore is exploration. Now obviously this is kind of my primary passion, and it really has to do with everything that involves going out and experiencing new things. That could be physical exploration, whether that's through backpacking or traveling, but it could also be intellectual exploration by learning a new skill or learning to cook a new recipe. Whatever that is, there's a joy and happiness that comes from experiencing novel things, and I think that's truly valuable in most people's lives to a certain extent. Adventure, so whether that's whitewater kayaking or rock climbing or backpacking, again, it's the same idea of going out and exploring new things, but it's done through a more physical, outdoorsy approach. Be sports. A lot of people are really involved, whether they grew up playing it as I did, but were more serious or better at it, and so they got to continue kind of through their young adulthood and even into playing in adult leagues. You know, you don't have to be a professional to keep enjoying sports, whether that's a lunchtime crew or an after work program. Travel is a big one, I think, for a lot of people. That's the ultimate goal when people talk about what they would want to do with their life and what they want to do when they retire, and it's this idea of going around and exploring different countries and different places in the world and being able to go out and just, again, that exploration of experiencing novel things but under different cultural and potentially environmental characteristics. So my second big passion is creativity, and again, this is more of an umbrella topic that encloses some of the big creative outputs that people have. So the first one would probably be like classic art, whether that's painting and drawing or sculpting, even graphic design to a certain extent. It's electronic, but it's still putting an idea on paper. Even tattooing is, in my opinion, more of a classical art. Whereas in contrast, you have more of the production arts, whether that's cinematography, photography, podcasts, even music, if you're more on the electronic or on the production side of music rather than the singing and the playing the instrument. There is that other half though to music, which is more of a performance art, when you're the person up on stage, you're the person writing songs, playing songs, being kind of the center of attention instead of working in the background. Other performance arts could be also things like theater or even comedy, things of that nature, where you're up on stage and you're actually acting out some sort of scene or telling some sort of story. So now in a completely different space, you have the financial aspect, and some people are very passionate about finances and building their wealth. Now, without it necessarily being their ultimate desire, it could be a big part of their life. And so there are a couple different kind of subcategories to that bigger umbrella term, whether that's growing businesses. Some people enjoy finding businesses and trying to figure out how they can make them better, how can they make them more profitable and get the most out of their investment. There's also more of a kind of food-driven passion now, I think is way more predominant now in life, now that kind of a lot of people have access to a myriad of recipes online that are completely free and that allow you to really explore and push yourself and try new and exciting things. And there's more of a beverage side of it, where I like to call them kind of brew masters, people who like to make their own beer, make their own wine, and you could even kind of extend that to people who really enjoy mixology and learning how to prepare different drinks. There's also kind of a manual labor group or construction based group, whether those people who really enjoy mechanics, working on cars, maybe doing up old cars, or carpentry, people who love to build things with their hands, everything from planter boxes to tiny homes. Gaming, and whether that's game design, so programming and actually creating games, or just spending their time playing. Professional gamers and people who enjoy streaming and creating a community of people who just enjoy spending their time doing the same thing. And I feel like most people would probably identify with at least one, maybe two of these, and I think that's really a good place to start, and then kind of just diving into it and trying different things and seeing what it is that they like and how to build that into their life.
So as I mentioned at the top of this video, your passions are really what are meant to fuel you. When you talk about pursuing an ultimate desire, or next week we're going to talk about intentional work, these can really be like a day-to-day grind, and they can suck at times. And so your passions are designed to fuel you and to give you the energy to deal with all of that, because you have this constant influx of a little bit of happiness because you're doing the things that you always wanted to do. So in this video, we've kind of gone through a bunch of different passions that you may have already nailed down, or that you're more interested in exploring or continuing to explore, and that's totally okay. As I mentioned, this structure, this life system is really an evolving process, and it takes time to figure out all these pieces. So I'm really happy that we got to do this. We got to kind of explain some of the different categories and give you guys some small paths that you may choose to follow and figure out what your actual passion is. With that being said, these are things that aren't necessarily, you know, catching up on your favorite TV show or sleeping. These are really things that are meant to, yes, those things can bring you happiness, but your passions are really meant to uplift you and get you involved in your own life rather than just watching it pass you by. So with that, I want to say thank you very much for watching. Definitely, as always, like the video if you enjoyed it, like the video if you found it helpful. You can always reach out to me, whether that's through the comments or directly on Instagram. I answer everyone who sends me a message, and I'm looking forward to next week jumping into intentional work, and it's going to be a little bit more heavy and a little bit less fun than potentially exploring all of these awesome things you can do with your life. But I think it's really important to make the most of your life and really help you achieve those ultimate desires and really create a situation where you can explore your passions without any sort of worry or feeling guilty because you feel like you should be doing something else with your time, because all of those things will be taken care of because you've set up the system to do so. So with that, I want to say thank you very much, and tune in next week for intentional work.